Going straight to our session for today, and sharing the screen a bit. All right, sorry. Yeah, good morning, and thank you for making the time to be with us here today. Yeah, so today we'll be looking at the first session that's talking about community and looking at history and the other things that are very important in the advocacy journey. So the first question I pose is why me? So why would you as a participant go on a journey of being an advocate and an activist? So that's the first question. Why me? So why you? So we are looking at, first of all, a community. So the community are in various types. But first of all, when you say community, a community refers to a group of people living in the same place or having a particular characteristics in common. So that means our community can be limited to perhaps our geographical boundaries or our virtual communities. And each and every one of us belong to a community, perhaps where we live, where we come from, the things we do, and others. So that is the community we are referring to. Now, we also have another community, and this community might be in terms of our interests, in terms of the things we like, in terms of the things we want to offer. So you realize that aside the community where we look at the geographical boundaries, we also have the community that is based on our attitude and interest. So that means we have a journalism type of community, we have human rights, we have persons with disability, we have religion, and we have football. So the communities are many, but it depends on where we find ourselves. Okay, so when we look at these two communities, and we ask ourselves the question that where do we belong, or which community we want to have this form of advocacy. So that determines what we do, that influences the decisions we make. It also informs the tools and the methods we want to employ in terms of carrying out the cause. So based on the community, we perhaps the physical community, geographical community, you might look at, let's say, Osu, Bongo, those are the geographical boundaries. The virtual community could be Facebook, Twitter. Now you realize that when you look at Osu, that's the community you belong to. Perhaps you belong to, if you look at, live in Ashama, you live in maybe a certain place. Based on where you live, you do things differently. And based on where you live, you have a different mindset and you have the things you want to get through advocacy or through activism. Also, when you look at the community, which is looking at the interest and attitude, if you're a journalist, you have the mindset, you have things you want to look out for. So there are various types. So if you're in journalism, there's something like right to information bill that you want it to be passed. So based on where you are, the kind of community you find yourself influences your attitude, influences how you want to be and what you want to see at the end of the day. Now, in terms of advocacy, we are saying that based on the community, you need to take notice of various things. So that would say that, fine, before you start advocating for something, before you start looking at coming out with solutions to solve the problems in your community, you need to first of all make a profile of the community you belong to. So there's a need for you to first of all profile the community you are in. So profiling basically just having an understanding of what something is, looking at the characteristics, and it determining how you deal with it, or even sometimes even predict the action that will come after. So they are profiling a community. Let's say, for instance, in the geographical area, you perhaps live in Osu. Now you need to understand the tradition of the people of Osu. In understanding the tradition of the people of Osu, it helps you develop an interest in making sure that whatever that you're advocating for can easily move into your way of life and easily change certain things that you don't want, or certain things that are hindering the development of people, the development of youth, or even various persons in the community. So when you look at tradition, it could be gender roles. Now perhaps you're looking at carrying out a campaign or carrying out advocacy that is based on girl child education. Now, when you don't understand the tradition of the people in the community, you might get there and start acting in a certain way, which to you might be right, but to them, it's perhaps against what they stand for or against what is unique to them as a group of people or as a tribe or as community of interest. So when you look at the tradition, it influences their way of life. So it could be that for them, the gender roles are men wearing cattle and women making home. So those are the things that you need to look at, the tradition of a community. So first of all, you live in a community which has its own way of life. It has its own forms of activities, which is unique to them. So tradition, you need to look at that. Now the power structure. Now, as people who want to start advocacy, in the community in which we live in has various forms of power structure. It's either the tradition, sometimes it's traditional structure or the political structure. Now, understanding the power structure helps you to know who to speak to, guides you in approaching the right authority. For instance, if you have an issue with, let's say, you don't have a borehole in your community, or you have a problem with your source of water, who is the authority that you should move to? Should you move to the traditional council, or should you move to the chief, or should you move to the what do you call it, the assemblyman? Who should you move to? So that's the issue. So looking at the power structure guides you and it helps you know who to approach and not just do things in a way which will disrupt. So we realize that in some communities, the chief has more power than the assemblyman, than the political leaders. In some communities, the political leaders have more power than the traditional rulers. So let's say, for instance, we know that the 2 has much power. So if you want to effect change, you have to implement it. You wouldn't, first of all, start by just only engaging the MPs and the district assemblies. Meanwhile, you know that the 2 has greater power than these. And whatever he says is going to affect them. So moving into a community or even starting an advocacy in a particular community, we need to look at the power structure. And looking at the power structure will guide us in approaching the right authority by not overlooking others and thinking that without necessarily going to the chief, we can still effect change in the community. Without necessarily going to the assemblyman, we still effect change in the community, or the district assembly still effect change. So that's the issue. Now we also have to look at the taboos of the community. I intentionally removed the taboos out of the tradition to make a point, because now taboos are things that are forbidden. They are not allowed. Now, for example, persons with albinism are forbidden in some Ghanaian communities. Now, if you are going to carry out an advocacy in a community where persons with albinism are forbidden, where persons with albinism can't live in that community, that means it should guide you in your advocacy plan and should guide you in drawing out your strategy in terms of changing your mindset and correcting the narrative. So that's the That's one thing we can also look at. So taboos are very essential because in advocacy, we are trying to change some cultural underpinnings. We are trying to change some things which are being held in high esteem. So if persons with albinism are forbidden in some Ghanaian communities, and you want them to accept persons with albinism, that means there are things you need to do. There are things you need to follow. So if a person's albinism is forbidden there, what are the things you should do in terms of consultation? Should you move into that community on the first day with the person with albinism? No. That person with albinism might be hurt or might be killed because he or she is not allowed in the community. So looking at these three traditions, what are the ways of life for the community? What are the things they hold in high esteem? What is their way of life? Because first of all, change is something that's a process. It doesn't happen all at once. So if we want to effect change in a community, we need to understand the profile of the community. Now, why do we have to have this profiling and all that? It's because, one, it makes the community own the development. It's a participatory approach. Now, if we are looking at the tradition, looking at the power structure, looking at the taboos, we are able to communicate to them why they should own the development, why they need to change their ways. We are sort of dialoguing with them. We want to understand their ways and we want them to understand us. So having a common ground, that is what will make them own the development. Because if you are making them feel like you are coming with a development and you want them to change, but they don't have to change personally, then it becomes an issue where they feel that, oh, you want them to act this way. So immediately you leave the area or leave the community after our advocacy, they go back to their old ways. But when we profile the community and we understand them, we are able to meet them at the point where it's easier to dialogue, it's easier to do certain things that will make things better. Also, the essence of profiling helps to develop tailored solutions. Now, you can't just go into a community and start thinking that, okay, well, why should it be a taboo for persons with albinism to live in a community? We actually don't understand it. So we are saying that anyone who is found to hurt or harm any person with albinism will deal with the person. So first of all, you don't understand who actually, you don't understand why they have it as a taboo. And perhaps you might think that, oh, this is their problem. So they are not accepting persons with albinism because they don't have sunscreens for them or because they have a certain part of their skin in certain ways. So that is why they say it's a taboo. No. You have to first of all understand them. And through the participatory approach and through understanding and having dialogues with them and also having that rapport such that they are able to communicate to you freely what they think or what they see. If you look at it from their own lens at the problem, it helps you know how to tackle it. And it doesn't make you think about certain problems that exist in the community. That is why sometimes in some communities you build a structure, for instance, in a community where you're going to build, you think that the students are failing. So for instance, you take a community and the students aren't performing well in the BEC, and you go there to construct a library for them. Constructing the library for them might not be the solution, because perhaps the solution maybe the library is not a problem, but the problem might be that they don't have potable water, so they spend most of their time walking a long distance to other communities to fetch water. So realize that when you're able to dialogue with them, when you're able to understand their tradition, able to understand them better, we are able to come out with tailored solutions. So the solutions that just don't come out from you because you think you imagine problems for them, but to look at solutions that speak directly to their problem. So that is it. So it helps you develop tailored solutions instead of come out with solutions when it doesn't solve their problem. So if a community has a problem with the the students are not performing well in school at the BC, at the BHS level, and you think that we don't have a library, and you think that the library is a problem, so the library is still failing, I mean, it's not solve the problem. Perhaps if you speak to them, have a conversation with them, it makes them understand. You get to understand that it's because of lacking, they lacking some sort of potable water, or they having certain issues which you might not have seen just with your analysis. Yeah. So that's what you're looking at, the essence of community profile. Now, as youths who are venturing into advocacy or have started, now we have forms of advocacy and activism. So advocacy will look at the public support and try to work within the system. So we have seen some advocacy, information bill, NFPM, girl child education, some can say affirmative action bill and all that. All these things are advocacy. So advocacy mostly uses the sort of the systems in trying to change the things or find solutions to the problems we have in our community. And activism is much more of using various the unconventional ways. So we are using ways to change, to effect change. So you write letters, you write petitions, you write articles, you go on demonstrations, you have some others just to make sure that you change certain narrative, or you change certain policy, or you fix, or to carry out a cause. You might have heard about it. So in terms of advocacy, you've heard of right information bill, ending female genital mutilation, girl child education. And with girl child education, you quite remember that in the early 2000s where they were having these songs. Send your girl child to school, send your girl child to school. So these were songs, try using the system to change the narrative. And today we have more. There has been a significant increase in the number of enrollment of women and girls in school, and even moving towards high living and tertiary level. Now, activism is much more most like saying, like, giddy giddy. You actually don't look at the system, let's say, like, you control the government. Activism is much more of making your voice heard and using other ways of drawing attention to a specific problem that you want it to solve. So, for instance, we have a climate strike, you have the Save It Tiwa, you have demonstrations, you have articles. So, if people write articles concerning a certain problem to draw the attention to the government or to certain people, it's sort of, without being, right, go to the assembly, go to that. That might have been the steps or the procedure. Activism is more of looking at the ways of drawing attention and effective change in different, not the normal way, not working in the system. Yeah. Now, the issue is, why would you want to be an advocate, or why would you want to be an activist? So that's the question you need to ask yourself. So that's why I asked, the first presentation is, why me? Why would you want to be an advocate? Why would you want to be an activist? So the issue is, do you want to be an activist and advocate because you are a victim of the situation? Perhaps you are used to living in a community where there are a lot of teenage pregnancy, or perhaps your family or personally you have been affected by the situation in your community. You don't have potable water, so you are a victim of such situation. So it's making you go out there to advocate, to campaign, to make sure that the leaders or the people come out to make sure that you have potable water. So why you? Why do you want to be an advocate? Why do you want to be an activist? So that is the main thing. So sometimes people are victim of the situation, so therefore they become advocates. The second thing could be the altruistic attitude. Perhaps you feel that there's a need to belong to a group where you seek the welfare of others, where you push the agenda, where everyone feels okay, where how your neighbor feels is of concern to you. So if your neighbor is abused because he or she is a woman, based because of her gender, she's not allowed certain job opportunities. So you want to go out there and advocate for her such that she would be given an opportunity as you, or even other things. So autistic attitude. So that's why you want to be an advocate or an activist. Now the minority group. So this is an issue where you belong to a group of persons who are in a small group. For instance, persons with disability. So because you're in that group, you want to be an advocate, you want to champion a cause where your voices are heard and make sure that you also have social intervention where your needs or your wants are being addressed by the government and by the public. So that would be the reason. Would it be a case where you're seeking hindrance? So advocacy and activism all depends on your purpose and why you want to be one. So if you've been a victim of the situation, that means you need to move out there and change the narrative. If for other reasons too, it's also dependent on you. Now, this is a quote from the Lutheran pastor. And it says, first they came for the socialists, and I did not speak up because I was not a socialist. Then they came for the trade unions. I did not speak up because I was not a trade unionist. Then they came for the Jews, and I did not speak up because I was not a Jew. Then they came for me, and there was no one left to speak for me. So, in this journey of advocacy, what Martin is basically saying is that whenever you keep quiet about the situation, whenever you say this thing doesn't affect me, so I wouldn't campaign, I wouldn't join them to advocate for these things. It means that perhaps because it doesn't affect you, you're not a victim, so or you think you're not in part of the minority group, so you're okay. I always when the issue about COVID-19, about the stigmatization of health workers started rising, people started talking about it. Then it dawned on me that sometimes perhaps these persons who are health workers might not have been stigmatized their whole life. But today, here they fall in a group where they're being stigmatized. That's the same thing, like with victims. So that's the issue we are looking at. That do you only want to advocate because you want to be a victim, or you act different because you think it doesn't affect you? Well, the issue is that the day something might have happened to you, you might also need some support. You need some people to also speak on your behalf. So advocacy and activism is something that should be part and parcel of us. We need to actually be on course most of the time because it helps one concentrate and helps one to focus on certain things that would have been neglected. And it's very good to be an advocate. It's very good to be an activist. Yeah, so this is the last presentation I have. I'll be looking at
I think one was after.
yeah, patient, we can hear you.
Yeah, I said Swan's hand was up earlier, so you can ask me for a question.
Oh, okay. Yeah, some of you have been muted. Yeah.
Okay, so I have a question on tradition. So when you are talking about tradition, you said that we need to make sure that what you are coming to, let's say, advocate about in the community, or what you want to bring up as a form of development in the community, must be in line with the traditions of the people. I wanted to know, don't we stand the risk of actually helping them perpetuate some traditions that they hold on that might not necessarily be in line with their that might not necessarily be good to development. So for instance, in a community, they like to work with the ideology that men at every point in time have to be above the women. If we are supposed to bring up something in that line, would it not rather go on to perpetuate that?
Okay. Thank you very much. Okay. Mavis has okay. Mavis, I would like to also take Mavis input. All right, Mavis, you're on.
Okay, I think he asked a similar question. I wanted to ask if sometimes maybe because you want to use the participatory approach and then you are involving the people and you are trying to you realize that some of the solutions they may be bringing up wouldn't help. Is it important to enforce it on them because you think the solutions they are bringing up wouldn't help development? So you just try to maybe divert their attention to something, or you enforce it on them, kind of impose on them if they are trying to refuse the right thing. I don't know if the question is clear.
Oh, okay. So that means using a participatory approach, and perhaps the solutions are not directly tailored to maybe or help them. Okay, I get it.
Sure.
Okay, Swansea.
Yes.
Yeah. So
yes, please. So yes, sorry, I have to come back. So I have another question on the power structure.
okay.
So you are supposed to.
Let me address the first one, then I'll.
Yes, please. Yes, please. Okay. Okay.
All right. So the reason I use the tradition here. So going back to the PowerPoint presentation again, I use the tradition here is to. Yeah. So the tradition here. Now the issue is that we are not trying to undermine the people or try to look down on people. I think that perhaps they doing something that's in, or we think that what they are doing is not right. Let's say, for instance, FGM. We want to end FGM in the community, the tradition. So we are not trying to say that they should continue with FGM, but the issue is to understand, look at the problem, look at what we think is the problem from their lens. Now, let me cite this example. So, even though this is not supposed to be out because it's still ongoing. Now, let's say, for instance, I'm using persons with albinism, but that was the recent work I did with a friend. Now, let's say the tradition is that let's say, for instance, they have women. So that's what I'm saying. I remove the taboos out of the tradition to just highlight some points. But the tradition is that taboo is part of tradition. So you don't want persons with albinism in your community. Why don't they want it? So they don't want it because perhaps to them they feel that they are a sign of bad women. Okay, now we are looking at it from their lens, and understanding from their lens would help you know the people you should walk to, the people who you should approach in terms of finding solutions. So when you understand the tradition, it helps you understand that first of all, you have to go to some people, and who might be the people? It might be the fetish priest. So the tradition will be that it is the fetish priest who is enforcing the traditions and constantly reminding them. It might be the fetish priests who are more telling the people that if you see this person in your house, you don't have to accept the person. If you see this person in your farmland, that means you're going to have an issue. So tradition here is not meant to necessarily reinforce their cultural traits, which hinders development, but looking at the problem that we see from their own lens. And I think looking at it from their lens will only give us a better understanding of why they are saying so. So if we get into a community where we want to make girls attend school, and we realize that, well, the girls are at home, the men are on the field farming. When we look at it from their perspective, we understand that, okay, the tradition here could be that, oh, well, while the man is on the field working, the woman is at home nurturing the home. But the issue is that when you want to effect change, when you want the girls to go back to school or get back to school, how can we effect the change without necessarily disrupting, making them feel that the development doesn't belong to them, and it's just that we are imposing on them. So the issue is that the developments should be such that they should own it. So looking at tradition, looking at perspective would be that, okay, when the girl comes back from school, the girl is supposed to carry out house chores. So the girl is supposed to carry out her duties. She's not supposed to ignore the duties because she's in school. So finding a balance between the person going to school and the person coming back home to carry out his or her duty. So you realize that at some point there was some education that doesn't mean that when you close from school, you don't just do anything. You do your homework and that's all. It wouldn't help because it's sort of like a complementary role where the men and the women are carrying out roles to help each other grow. So if that is the tradition, that's their perspective, it could help in making things better. So that is how I understand from the tradition perspective. So if you're going to make that, you are looking at it from the perspective. When you look at it from their perspective, it gives you a better vision of what you are looking at or perceiving as a problem in the community. Because what you might see as a problem might not be a problem to them. So hence, it makes them understand. Maybe this question was on, I don't know whether if I'm answering the question, but maybe this question was on something regards to, I think, the same tradition. I don't know whether I've answered both Swansea and maybe these questions together. Right, okay. So Stella asked a question. So maybe she raised your hand. I'll take Swansea's on, then go back to maybe then Stella. Yeah, so I'll take, so Swansea, you raised your hand, maybe did too. Yeah, so Swansea, you're on. I don't know whether I've answered your question.
Yes.
Okay. Sorry, I want to find out from Mavis before.
My question is answered, please.
It's answered. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yeah.
And then, okay. So Swansea, you had a question. Then I'll go to. Okay. Then Stella. Then Kwame. All right, Swansea.
Yes. So you also made mention of the fact that in bringing up a development policy or project or something, you have to make sure that you recognize the power structure of the particular society.
Yeah.
So I wanted to know, in doing that, are we supposed to approach officers, as in the assemblyman, the chief, or we can also use individuals? Because you know that sometimes in some communities you have some individuals who are influential and they can really, let's say, help you get along with people and other things. So do we have to stick to offices, or we can use individuals, or yes, or we can use anyone that our profiling reveals to be influential? Then the second one is that, do we look out for some specific qualities or characteristics in these offices that we would approach?
Oh, okay. All right. Thank you. So I'll take Stella's. I'll look at Stella's own, then get to Kwame. All right. Yeah. So Swansea, the issue about the thing we're looking at power structure is that, first of all, in every community we have different levels of that we have one development, but in every community we have who controls what. So we realize that in certain communities there are people who control certain resources. So you want to understand who will be the right person to approach. Now we are communication students. Sorry, Noel and Kwame might not have been privy to this knowledge of the two-step approach. Okay, so the two-step approach here will tell you that using opinion leaders to move into the community. So in terms of advocacy and activism, it is very necessary to understand who are the key players or who are the key implementers in terms of a certain cause, or in terms of carrying out the message to the people, where the people feel connected. So in every community, we can't necessarily move, just like how we in advertising. They are, sometimes we are moved by the people we see on telly, not necessarily by the products, the people they feel connected to. Now, if you're going to a community and want to effect change, would you want to be there to speak to the people, or you want the chief to speak to the people, or you want the district assembly to speak to the people? Who would they listen to? Me as Daniel coming to them, or the chief coming to them to tell them that, look, send your ward to school, send the boy to school. when they come back from school, they'll still carry out the house chores, all the things you want them to do, but just make them go to school, let them have education. You get it? So depending on where you are, depending on the community, if you are in a geographical community, you know, I said there are two types of communities. One limited by geographical boundaries, the other so geographical boundaries or the virtual, and the other one based on the interest and our attitude. So when you want to get into a community to effect a change, now who would you want to approach? Sometimes in community, that's what I'm saying, the power dynamics is so real that if you go and see the chief without seeing the district assembly, perhaps in that community the district assembly doesn't have much authority like the chief. So if you want to effect change, if the chief says no, that is it. Perhaps when the chief says no, that is it. In some communities, if the district assembly says no, that is it, the chief obeys. So you have to interrogate, you have to understand them, and to know the power dynamics, such that you're able to approach all of them. I'm using this power structure that the power structure can also be that, just as you said, opinion leaders. You would have even the chief priest being someone who can even effect change in the community. Now, if you want to change the issue about, we have a certain culture where a virgin lady is sent to the chief, sent to the priest in atonement or to repay the debt of a family member. You understand that? So if it's the chief priest who will not take the lady, then you realize that the chief priest needs to be consulted, because he or she, in terms of, makes sure that this tradition is followed. And that's the power structure, the traditional, the political. The district assembly might say, hey, this might say, you don't need to do that. But as far as the chief priest is there, and the district assembly might not want to influence, might not want to interfere, because perhaps he or she is a supporter of some spiritual thing. Yeah, so that is what we are looking at. So the power structure is very real, and in every community, if you don't explore such, it will be very difficult for you to sometimes even get your things carried out. And power structure in another level could mean that, for instance, you want the beneficiaries of the project or the advocacy are not necessarily the ones that will carry out to them. So I don't know what I'm making sense, but it's just like you saying that you want to carry out polio vaccination. So polio vaccination, the power structure. So when you look at the profiling communities, sometimes when it goes on deeper and deeper, I realize that to even go to a house and take a child to vaccinate you, or to perhaps give him or her an injection, there's a need for you to even consult the family. You need to even speak to the mother. Because you can't just go and pick the child and start injecting him or her because you want to fight against polio. So power structure helps us understand the dynamics and helps us speak to the people without necessarily making one group or person working against the other. No, it's for their own good. Stella has a question that says that, so in terms of researching and understanding the community, as you design an advocacy project, how are you able to use this approach, especially during this time? So this time as in COVID-19 time. So research and understand the community. Now, for instance, in this period of COVID-19, where you want to understand the community, now we have opinion leaders. We can use the opinion leaders and looking at advocacy projects. Now, it's more of you don't have to, so there's a ban on public gatherings and all that. But first of all, in designing an advocacy project, you would want to get the opinion leaders. You would want to reach out to the various groups in the community. Now, for instance, in the community, you'd have youth groups, you'd have market women groups, you'd have women groups, you'd have men groups. No, these are groups, smaller groups in a community. And now that in this period where there's some sort of restriction and all that, you can still speak to these people, identify the various groups in the community. And this can easily be done when you move into your community, you go to see the chief, or you get, so more like getting an insider. And it's always helpful to get an insider, so that because the person lives with them, he or she understands them, is able to provide you with resources or provide you with certain information which you might not know. So in terms of understanding the community, you can look at the various divisions in the community. You can go to the imam, you can go to the pastor. All these people have congregants, they have people, they have audience. Because at the church, the people in the community attend the church. In the same community, people are Muslims. They are the same community. There are people who are the chief priests. So when you identify the opinion leaders, they will tell you what the community is about from their own lens. It gives you an insight into what is happening in the community. And I think that's and it says, she further asked that, how do you adjust this approach and generally activism practices to fit the times in which we are in? So for instance, you have an issue, so adjusting this approach, activism. Now, still, we can still employ, so I don't know whether it's just similar, but if you're looking at the case where adjusting this approach in terms of understanding the community and activism, there are a lot of things we can look at. Now some communities, there might be reports about some communities, there might be journalists working in some communities, there might be health workers in some communities. So we can use the informal approach, we can use the formal approach. So in terms of some sort of research, so we can go and conduct some interviews, not necessarily a formal interview where they have to answer questionnaires, but in a form of interaction, we get to understand the community. So activism is much more about going out and reaching out to the people and letting them understand that this development belongs to them. But in looking at it from their lens, you don't have to employ various ways. So anyone living in a community can speak to you. Who is the professional there? Do you have a teacher? Now remember that sometime in our activism and advocacy periods, we've worked with teachers in the community, we've worked with pastors. And these are the people who give us insights about the community. So at every level, it depends on who is ready to speak to us, who is living in the community. So all these places, all these people are entry points into the community, understand them better. I don't know if I've answered your question. So you can speak to them via telephone. You can speak to them. So telephone would have been easier. Also, we can use the community, and there's community radio, but in all, there should be a contact person in the community to give you insight. Because you might want to go to the community, but you can't live in a community for like 6 months before it has come down to advocacy. But if you realize that there's a situation there, who are the people living there? Can we speak to them? Can they tell us what they think? Who is there that is literate? Can he understand the English and give us more insight? Yeah, so that is it. So I don't know if Stella, you are okay.
Yes. Daniel, I understand you, but so I feel like it's such a difficult time, especially for activists, because as you said earlier, activism is more extreme. Okay, yeah. So we are looking at actions more than words, right? Mm-hmm. And so look at, for instance, for climate activists, where there's the climate strike, where people are going out demonstrating. But in times like this, what do you do? So I'm looking at more of you exposing me to how to use technology. You understand? Because we are trying to not move around much. Mm-hmm. We are trying to, social distancing, self-isolation, and all the restrictions, as you mentioned earlier. So we are trying to not move around so much. We are trying to not only protect ourselves, but the people that we come across, right?
Yeah.
So I'm looking at more of how do I use technologies to still do the work I do from my home?
Okay.
Is that possible?
Yes, it is very, very, very possible. So the idea about this, for instance, this thing, so activism, so for instance, demonstration and all that, we have a greater advantage because this is a political season. So we want to organize people. Now, we might want to focus on, let's say, if we want to effect change. So let's say, like in what I do in climate change and others, where we go on campaigns, we on demonstration and all that. Now we might not have the opportunity to do that. That means we need to switch our plan to more of a policy engagement. So in terms of policy engagement, we need to shift our minds to, okay, in the community. Now, can we empower the people themselves, make them feel that they own the project, and such that without us, we can still move to the community, move to their district assembly. So in terms of activism, we could have 2 or 3 people. Let's say, for instance, in a rural area where we want to effect change. So we can either go there personally. So we can go there as not lots of us, but as maybe a group of 3 or 4, get into the community and empower the people themselves to make sure that they carry out their own project. So let me share this example with Action Aid Ghana. So Action Aid Ghana has various groups in communities in Ghana. So instead of they being there to advocate for women's rights, your child education, climate change, and all that, they go into the community, empower the people, make them own the projects, and make the people carry out their own form of activism. So at the end of the day, you are there to provide, to guide them through. You are there to say, okay, fine. Instead of going out to the district assembly, why don't you gather as a group of people and construct your own, let's say, a plantation where you can get some money to build your own school. And when you are able to gather enough resources, you can now stand on your feet and tell the district assembly that even on your own, you're able to do this. Or perhaps you might want to gather yourselves and go to the district assembly and tell them that you don't have certain things in place. So in terms of activism, you might not have to be there every day. That is why you need to be conscious of the fact that you can't be there every day to be leading them. They have to learn how to lead themselves and to learn how to carry out campaigns personally. So Action Aid, for instance, like this, they have various working groups in the communities. And these communities are based on the people who live there. And this a form of activism carried by the people. So for instance, in Bongo, sometime last year, we carried out the projects where we went to various communities to empower them. So these are subgroups in the communities. So they carry out their own form of activism. So they go to the district assembly, they ask for certain things, they demand accountability, they demand for social amenities. Whilst demanding for social amenities, they will come back and say, oh, this is the feedback we got from the community. So instead of always saying that we want to be with the people, this is the time for us to now strategize and ask ourselves. Without us, without the physical appearance, can the people themselves feel empowered that they can come together and stand for something that we've been telling them to stand for? Or until they see us, they can't carry out a campaign. So we have to now strategize and find out that, well, we can empower them and have a group about 10 people in the community where we have interaction with them daily. So let's say, for instance, in Osu, if there's a problem in Osu and you want it resolved, perhaps we're going there, leading them in advocacy and all that. Now, COVID has set in and has changed all these things. Perhaps we might want to have a group of about 5 people in the community who have dedicated themselves to push for the needs. So these are more like a committee you set up in a community to lead a campaign. So in this time, just as I said earlier, profiling the community, it also, in profiling them, you also go a step further to create subgroups. So instead of you being there, you create a subgroup, for the subgroup to lead the campaign. So the subgroup, you now become more like a coordinator. So you have a subgroup in Osu where the subgroup consists of about 5 people, and those 5 people are representing the community. So if there's a problem in the community, if there's no water, this group will stand up, gather the people, and lead the charge. Just like how we use the church concept. You know, even though they have headquarters, they have various groups in various communities. So we can use that same idea. So when we have communities, we make sure we empower them. Now we can use technology to empower. If there's a technology barrier, we can go there, look into the community, call them and say, and get about 5 these people. So these people become like the representative of the community in order to lead a church. Yeah, so that's what we can do. So they can lead a campaign, we can be on the side to guide them, to provide, help them with resources, we can help them with any other thing without necessarily being there. Yeah, so that's what we can look at. I don't know, if I've answered your question. So creating subgroups in various communities and making sure that the people own the development and such that even if you live there for 10 years, what they do is that it's like you're a consultant, they come to you to consult you, or you step in at some point to help them, equip them with skills. So this is a period to reconsider our form of activism, employ the subgroups idea, develop some groups in the community where the people, these are the core group that we always get in contact with, or these are the groups that advocate on behalf of the community. Yeah. But I don't know if I answered the question.
Hello.
Yeah, Stella, I don't know if I answered your question.
Yes. Thank you.
All right, so Kwame has a contribution, so I'll take Kwame, then Richard, then Swansea, then I think we are done. If you are not concerned with you. Yeah, so Kwame.
Yeah, Daniel, I can hear you now.
Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah, to add to advocacy in terms of trying to change a tradition in a particular community. From experience, what we normally do is, I hope everyone can hear me.
Yes, please, I can. I can, I'm sure. Yes.
Okay. So what I was saying is to add to what you said earlier about because in terms of trying to change a tradition.
Mm-hmm.
What you normally do is, if you think the community is impenetrable, that means you, the advocate, cannot go directly into that community. You use that you think can help you to carry out that activity. And in most cases, most of the assemblements, especially when
sorry, Kwame, can you?
Very remote.
Sorry.
Either fall on the assemblymen or school headmasters to it means I should repeat certain things.
Yeah, the network was quite bad.
Hello?
Yes, I was just hoping for you to hear it clearly.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
In advocacy, as said, after profile, will definitely identify some individuals who can help you in your advocacy. Trying to penetrate some of the communities, you need to look out for individuals that you think can help you, especially to mobilize the community. And one thing we do is you need to use the community against itself. You not necessarily have to impose your education or sensitization on the community, but use the community against itself. You can pick a point, either the chief, the assemblyman, or any opinion leader. Sensitize that person on your issue. Let the person understand both the pros and the cons. Then that person can lead the advocacy on your behalf before you penetrate.
Okay.
That is one approach we normally use. And sometimes, say, in terms of people with albinism, are not allowed into certain communities, you need to do a lot of research and try to sensitize the community around that community, because we are not always allowed to enter. So we have to sensitize other communities around particular communities, and we also get information with regards to particular activities that happen in that community that does not allow people with albinism to go into such communities. So instead of going directly into that community, because your safety is also concerned, I think there's total ban on you going to that community. Then what you do is you have to try to bring out the opinion leaders and the community leaders out of that community and sensitize them outside their own community instead of going into their territory. Bring them out of their own territory so you could be able to sensitize them or speak to them about your issue. That is one approach you can use. If you think you cannot penetrate that community, then bring out people, pick and choose. Especially when it comes to traditional beliefs or taboos, the people who hold in high esteem those taboos are the traditional leaders. So you have to bring them out of that community. Try to sensitize them outside their own territory. When they understand, then they themselves, at a point in time, will try to invite you to speak to their community members, and they may even lead in their communication. And that's some of the approach we've been using to sensitize communities. I think that's what I wanted to add.
Okay, all right. Thank you very much. Thanks so much for the contribution. So we have, okay, done. I don't know if Richard Mensa. We have Kristen Sauce, Francis.
It's fine, I'm okay.
Okay, right. And Swansea, I saw your hand up. Do you have any? Swansea. Swansea, I don't know if you have your question answered.
Yes. Well, it's answered.
Right.
I think Kwame gives some insight to it. I was just thinking of how you'd be able to map out who is influential, who is a leader in the community. And I think that from all that has gone on, whether you like it or not, there has to be one or the other. You'd have to kind of get into the community and get some information. Either you do it through others who would go in for you. In the case of Kwame, where maybe the circumstances around you are not safe to enter the community yourself or something, but you just have to go on ground and also find out some information.
Okay, great. Yeah, so yeah, basically that. So we would have some take-home assignment. Yeah, it's a template. It's a template to be filling. So patients will be sharing with you via email. You fill the template, you send them back to her. So we use it to measure what you've done today. So just in a bit, we are almost done. I know some of you got scared when you saw the 3 hour and sorry. We were trying to understand the duration and how it will be. So God willing, on Monday, we'll be having the next session. So and know that, okay, having something from Stella. Let me see. Okay, so Stella has given a contribution. So you can check the chat group to see the comments and all, everything still there. So she was talking about leaving people behind. No, the digital divide is true. So the digital divide is true, but aside the digital divide, we do not want to say that because we need to employ new ways of making sure that we have everyone on board, and the participatory and having subgroups will help everyone to get in place.